Next up from our regional partners are two folks from the Midwest. We get a 2-for-1 deal from them. We're going to hear from Mark Shields from the Indiana DOT and Doug Burke from Ohio. They're going to talk to us about vendor partner relationships and fleet life cycles in Ohio.
One of the wild ideas we came up with, because we have some new people in the Midwest group, is to basically do a roll call and introduce those new people to a group, who we're with, kind of what we do, and just say hi to the group to make sure we all know each other. I'm Mark Shields. You have seen me a few times here with Indiana DOT, statewide fleet manager.
Right, so I'm David May, the fleet manager for the state of Iowa, and generally I do the fleet management stuff that you might expect as other fleet managers do. I have a special place in my heart for biofuels, so that's kind of one of the things that I'm passionate about. So with that, I will pass the microphone off to my colleague Jennifer.
I'm Jennifer Munsrud, State of Iowa DOT. I am a spec writer. That's on one of
I'm Bob Ellington, Fleet Manager for Minnesota Department of Transportation.
Good morning, Wayne Kesey, North Dakota DOT.
Brad Moffett, South Dakota DOT. Dale Beatty, Nebraska DOT.
Scott Raddery, Michigan DOT.
Scott Boyer, Michigan DOT.
Sam Morrison with the Ohio DOT. Handle our fleet purchasing basically outside of our snow and ice program.
Tim Cunningham, Kansas DOT. I like long walks in the rain.
Doug Burke, the other Ohio Department of Transportation attendee. I'm in the truck run assembly and specifications in our central garage, and Sam will be doing that presentation instead of me.
I'm Amy Niederhelm. I'm from the Missouri DOT as the fleet manager.
I'm Tim Hearing. I'm the fleet manager for the province of Saskatchewan, Ministry of Highways in Saskatchewan, Canada. I'm a fitter and builder for the province, as well as a generator and everything else the minister doesn't want to do.
You are going to hear me talk about vendor partner relationships, and probably not in the fashion you think. Because if you're like me, when you talk to vendors, you get a lot of this, and then you get a lot of this. So there came a point over the years of doing this where this and this needed to not have me in the middle. So we've taken on this whole concept of quality assurance and quality control, and that involves getting this person and this person to talk in the same room without you in the middle. And what we have found is that that is actually starting to work wonders. When you get the two people that are actually doing it, or three people, or however many people that are involved in the same room, all of a sudden this and this can't happen because they're pointing face to face at each other, and really awesome things happen. We have had everybody from, just using our dump trucks as an example, because we do this across our entire fleet. Just recently, we just found out we almost got ourselves into a world of hurt because there's a running product change. And we had another vendor that was basically kitting out our PM kits. We had standardized our PM kits through another vendor that also happened to be one of the players at that table to be able to supply all the engine filters, transmission filters, hydraulic filters. Basically every filter on that truck came in a box. Well, what we found out from people sitting at the table is the people over here that did the product change didn't talk to this person. And if we'd had, we would have actually had probably about 400 trucks go down this winter just because of our own selves changing oil. Because this product literally caused a catastrophic failure in a part. And we would have put that same failing part right back in had we not had those people in that communication pathway opened up. So that was one example of kind of where we learned on this to be able to say, how do we do this better? There is no finger pointing here. We're all partners in this. When we sign a contract, we're looking at this not as I'm hiring you as an upfitter to just go do it, make it, come back, and I'll pay you a check. Because we keep this truck for 15 years. They're on the hook for probably the first 2. And then, after that, it's a working relationship on their shop floor. Either my 30 shops have to carry it, or their vendor network has to carry it. So why can't we do that better? Some of the other advantages that we've learned from this is that if you get the people that actually manufacture it in the room, you'll actually start realizing that there's things out there that neither of those necessarily knew from the other. So when you put a chassis manufacturer in the same room as an engine manufacturer, all of a sudden you start realizing, this really isn't my part, it's their part, but we have a solution, and here we are, this is not. Hey, now that coolant line may not be rotting out in 2 years anymore. So there are very solid wins when you start getting that kind of coordination in there. And this is still very much, like I said, a learning curve project. There's still some hurdles we're going through, but this has been amazingly helpful, getting those people in the same room and just figuring out how do we go forward with this. I'm not going to name any names. Indiana does have some very large players that I think we all deal with, so I may have a bit of an advantage on that to be able to get certain people in the room. So that is something that hopefully will carry dividends back over to the group as we go forward with these conversations. Hopefully you'll see some trickle-down effect to better partnering, better design, just from those corporate level engine people or corporate level transmission people, bringing in corporate level design people, and actually having them have these discussions. One of the things that I've constantly heard in our Midwest group is, well, I have this problem, I have this problem, I have this concern. Well, we all have these concerns. Why not escalate that? Why not bring them in? We've partnered with them. We're writing massive paychecks to them, and they want to do right. I've never met a vendor yet, at least from a corporate level, that wants to do wrong. They want to do right. They want to know these are going on. And a lot of times they just don't know because maybe we just don't rise to their level. Because you got to think, when I order my 80 trucks, if you've got manufacturer A out there running 40,000 of the same chassis, my 80 trucks are a rounding error to him. But now when you actually start talking the nuts and bolts about what that truly means, all of a sudden that rounding error starts carrying some weight behind it. And we've, as a Midwest group, started trying to figure out how can we do that? How can we represent kind of maybe that 30,000 foot common 2, 3, 4, 5 things back to the industry and say, not necessarily this is wrong, but start listening to our side of this. And the Midwest actually put up the salt corrosion on the board yesterday, and that's kind of one of the things that came out of this partnering, is what we have found is because we're just that tiny rounding error, that most of your people, when you bring them out, the corporate level people, they're used to building these trucks to haul freight, haul stone. They're not building these trucks to run around and bounce around in snow and ice all year long if you're anywhere north of, say, Kansas. So, there's been a big learning curve on that, and that's opened their eyes. So it's been very much appreciated from their angle. To where now we've kind of started talking not necessarily about a vocational type of standard that they build themselves to, but maybe can we start this whole DOT conversation, from a high level? Can we start looking at these trucks as DOT trucks, not vocational trucks that are shoehorned into a state to plow snow? And there's already been some product change requests go in just because we've had these corporate level discussions with the mechanic. We've put these people underneath the truck with my guys. I've chose a few of them that are, well, brutally honest, to be able just to go and say, hey, these are our concerns. This is what's happening. This is where we're struggling. And a lot of the times you'll see the eyes get real big on the corporate level folks because like, we never knew that. And this is every truck. And you just go bing, bang, boom down your line. You got 5 trucks there, all same problem. All of a sudden, you can show that little bitty rounding error is now real in our world. And then if, we want to make this better, and that's where we're going with this. So that's kind of where we're at in a nutshell in this partnership. It's not a DOT vendor upfitter direct partnership. It is everybody, your subs, your third tiers, all coming together, sitting at a table, maybe not necessarily at the same time, but all coming to the table and sharing these ideas to clear out the communication backlog. So with that, I promised I wouldn't do any slides. So no slides, so I thought I'd open up some questions, kind of lessons learned, heartache we might have encountered. So any questions?
All right, so yeah, I'm Sam Morrison from the Ohio DOT. I think we missed somebody from Kansas when Mark went around the room. Jeff Tice is hiding back there in the corner.
I'm Jeff Tice, KDOT. I delegate up to Tim.
There you go. All right, so we didn't want to leave Jeff out. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've been doing with our fleet in Ohio over, seems like, several years. So our fleet life cycles, really. So we'll start with where we were at. So several years ago, we have 12 districts in Ohio, and each of our districts would submit a budget request each year for their operating funds that they needed. And included in that was a request for fleet equipment. So it kind of went along with everything else, salt, fuel, asphalt, whatever they needed, right? So at the end of the process, people in leadership at ODOT or finance at our DOT would basically say this is how much money we have, and they would choose what was funded off of their list of fleet requests. So traditionally, we probably had maybe $20 million in funding available for fleet replacements. Fast forward today, that number's been increased. We've been pretty fortunate. Today we've got about $50 million, or right at $50 million for our fleet replacement program. And just to kind of give you some insight, you know, you look at the slide, it says we've got just over 16,000 pieces of equipment. That includes, you know, everything from some attachments on skid steers that are fairly cheap up to, you know, we've got some, you know, snooper trucks and stuff for under bridge inspections that are obviously quite expensive. So that $50 million though is pretty much capped at what we can spend on replacements. And I know a lot of people here get to reinvest funding, it seems like, from proceeds from auction sales or when you guys dispose of equipment back into it. We don't get to do that with our funding right now. So that $50 million is basically all of the money that we have to spend on our equipment. So we've talked to you guys, it seems like, quite a few times about our snow and ice truck replacement program. I think most of you guys in here might remember that we replace our trucks on an 8-10, 12-year cycle, depending on the county that they're in the state. Traditionally, we've spent about $30 million. So we had $20 million for the rest of our fleet. We added $30 million for truck replacements. For the 1,630 trucks in our fleet, that puts us on an average of a 10-year replacement cycle. What's new, though, is in the last couple of years, some of our districts have been working pretty closely with the University of Akron. They've developed a tool to optimize our snow and ice routes. So they've been looking at that and figuring out, you know, where our trucks should be and which routes they should be on in the state and what makes the best sense with that. In addition to that, we've built a lot of new facilities. Our facilities have been better situated for where they're at in the state, and we've at the same time looked at the number of trucks that we're actually using in our snowstorms out there. And basically what our districts found out and what everybody agreed to was that we could reduce our fleet by about 100 trucks, so from 1,630 trucks down to 1,530, and that we would reduce those trucks over a 3-year period. So the last year was the first year of that. Our fiscal year starts in July. So starting in July would be our second year of reducing that, and next year would be our last. So then after that, we'll balance out at, should be around 1,530 trucks. And so what that does really is it reduces the number of trucks that we have to build, obviously, for 3 years, down to about 130. We might be a couple, 2, 3 over that. But what it does is that reduction from building 163 trucks down to about 130 trucks, it reduces the amount of money that we have to put in our truck round by $5 million a year. So we've taken that $5 million each year and we've invested it into the rest of our fleet. So now instead of spending $30 million on 1,630 dump trucks that we've got to replace, we've been spending $20 million on the rest of our fleet. We've had that more even. We've spent 25 and 25 on our fleet. So I think it's important to note that during that reduction, the trucks that we have in our fleet are still on an 8, 10, and 12-year cycle. So that hasn't been changed. So with that additional $5 million, we've chosen to invest that in a couple areas of our fleet. The first one is our tractor program. You can see on the slide it says we've got about 372 mowing tractors in our state. We've decided to put our mowing tractors that have basically a pull-behind mower, rotary mower, batwing style mower on them on a 3-year life cycle. And the tractors that have a mounted mower on them, a flail or a boom, would be on a 7-year cycle. See down there at the bottom, we're budgeting about $85,000 per tractor that's not on a replacement cycle anymore, or right now. We're budgeting about $40,000 for the ones that are kind of in between the 3 to 7 year age range. And then we're down to $14,000 for tractors that are on a 3-year cycle. So what we had done traditionally is budget $85,000 to replace a tractor that was on, say, a 15-year cycle. And I mean, you guys can do the math in your head. I mean, that works out to about $5,600 per year that we have invested into that tractor. When we take that tractor after 3 years and we sell it or we trade it back in, to a dealership that gives us the best offer. Traditionally, we're budgeting $14,000, but traditionally we see that between $10,000 and $12,000. So you guys, that drops that ownership cost per year down to $4,600, $4,500 or less. So we're saving some funding on that in the long term. So just to kind of explain the process of what we do, we don't have the ability to do a program. So it's not a buyback program. What we do is we buy the tractors outright, and what we do is we come up with a set of specifications, the tractors that we're going to trade in. We send that out for quote. Dealers from John Deere, New Holland, Case, whoever it might be, they come out, they give us a quote on the tractors that we're going to trade in, and a quote for the new tractors, and basically whoever's obviously the least expensive that meets our specs is typically the tractors that we've been buying. We do basically the same thing with our front end loaders, or we're planning to do the same thing with our front end loaders. We're in the second year right now of our tractor and our loader program. We're replacing tractors on a 3-year cycle as well. So you can see there we've got about 225 loaders in the state, placing them on a 3-year cycle. So loaders are quite a bit more expensive. With the tractor program, we started off buying a third of our tractor fleet right off the top. With the loader program, the loaders are more expensive, so what we're doing is we're buying a percentage, but once a loader is on cycle, once we buy a new loader, it stays on cycle. So it'll take a little bit longer for us to put all of our loaders on cycle. It'll be about, I think our fiscal year would be like 2021, 2022, when all of our loaders we estimate will be on cycle. So budget-wise for those, if we were going to go out there, buy a new loader, we'd spend about $140,000. Like I said, we don't get any money if we were going to auction off that old loader. It doesn't go back into our fleet program. So that cost is up front for us there at $140,000. So we were traditionally keeping loaders at about 15 years or so. It comes out to just over $9,000 for a loader, like $9,300, somewhere in there. So today we're trading in our loaders after 3 years, getting that cycle on, and we're budgeting about $22,500. Traditionally, we're seeing that number be a little bit lower than that. But you guys, if we're spending $22,500 on loaders for 3 years, then we're closer to, what's that come out to, about $7,500 a year. So you guys can see that there's a payoff there after you get equipment on cycle, that our ownership costs are quite a bit lower than where we would be at. So here's a slide that just basically shows some of the things that we've seen with our life cycles. So obviously if we have newer equipment, our downtime, it goes down quite a bit. I think you guys are probably familiar with having loaders out there that are 15 years old and salty conditions. It leads to some problems. So our downtime definitely drops with our loaders, our mowers, and our trucks, even with our younger life cycles. Our maintenance cost, repair cost, so our equipment's under warranty. We basically don't see any maintenance cost that's not scheduled maintenance on that. And with our loader program, the main companies it seems like we're buying loaders from are typically John Deere, Cat and Case. We've got a few Volvos and Doosan's in our fleet, but what we've been doing is asking for those companies to put us on a maintenance program. So all of our equipment seems like it's coming with telematics now. The dealerships know when there's a problem with it or when it's due for service. The vendor comes out, they bring the parts, they service the vehicle, or they service the equipment, and we don't have any cost associated with that. So that seems to be a pretty good deal. The next couple points there just kind of explains, why it works. I think we've explained that. Basically, we buy equipment at a very discounted price. We operate them for a few years. There's a demand from the dealerships to take those trade-in, and so the resale values on them are pretty good. Obviously, it lowers we talked about our ownership costs being lowered, our operating costs go down, and the other great thing about it is our employees and our people running the loaders, our mechanics working on the loaders are obviously a lot happier working on new equipment, operating new equipment. That works out pretty well. The goal moving forward would be to increase this program, put this program into more areas. We've got one district at least that has their skid steers, their backhoes, some of their other heavy equipment on a very similar cycle, a 3 to 5 year replacement cycle. They've seen it the same type of things, you know, reducing their ownership, reducing their operating cost associated with the equipment. These last few bullet points right here are really just about how we handle our budget. So like we said, we've got $50 million in our budget. So we take off the top funding for our snow and ice equipment, our tractor program, and our loader program. After that, each of our 12 districts are given basically $500,000 that they can use to buy equipment in areas that weren't funded elsewhere. When we buy a tractor that's on cycle, a district is budgeted $14,000. They get to which tractor they want to buy and what they need, what options, you know, they want on that tractor. If they budget a tractor that comes in and by the time they trade the tractor in and buy the new tractor, say that the price difference that we have to pay is about $10,000, well, that $4,000 then increases that $500,000 pot of money to $504,000. And the same thing goes the other way. Say they don't take care of their equipment, we don't get the resale value on our equipment. Say they spec a tractor that's a lot bigger than what they had in their fleet before, and there's a couple $1,000s higher than the 14, then we take that money away from their $500,000 pot of money. So it's some incentive for our districts to spec the right size tractor, to take care of their equipment, and keep that on cycle. The remaining budget that we've got in there is typically, it's about $8 to $9 million that we have left over after we put all those programs on cycle. And what we do is each district submits to us now a prioritized list of equipment. We take that list from each district, we put them into one statewide list, and we pull out some data points out of our fleet management system for utilization that we've had on our fleet, age of our fleet, and also maintenance costs that's been associated with the fleet. So obviously each type of equipment that we have has a sort of a metric, you know, of when we want to replace it or how much utilization we want on the fleet. And so basically each one of those 4 points contributes to a score for the equipment. We score each piece of equipment that's requested on those 4 points, and basically we sum those 4 scores together, and the equipment that has the highest score is what gets replaced. So that's kind of how we handle the rest of our funding. So I think that's all I've got with that.
Is there a concern that when you start trading so many tractors that you flood the market, and essentially the dealer's going to come back and start to dictate what size units they want in their yard?
Yeah, so I mean that's definitely a concern. It's something that you know, right now when we're operating this program, you can see financially it makes a lot of sense. If we run this program over several years and we see that we flood the market with that, we'll definitely have to reevaluate, you know, where we're at. But as long as our trade-in values make sense and the purchase price of our equipment makes sense, that's the plan. So with our tractor program, we've actually been doing it for, I would say maybe just under half the state's probably been doing it for maybe 3 to 5 years. So we've been trading in a bunch of tractors, and we do make some spec changes to them. We probably buy some of the R-Series John Deere tractors, things that maybe
There's more front-wheel assist tractors than we normally would.
things that farmers in our area would be more interested in, and things that dealers think they can move on the back end of that program. We do that a little bit. But yeah, we definitely watch our costs that are associated with it.
When you put stuff out to bid, you identify what you're going to trade in, and they look it over presumably and give you a price for what they'll pay you for that, or what they'll discount their. Do you see both prices? Do you see what they're giving you and what you're purchasing for?
What we do is we basically have a spreadsheet that we send out to all of the vendors that are going to be able to put a bid in for it, and the spreadsheet has a couple sections on it. One section has all the specs for the new equipment that we're going to buy, and it provides a line where they can list for each one we're going to buy what make, model, you know, some other smaller specs that they're going to provide us, and then the price for that. And then it also has a spot where it lists all of our viewing locations.
Contact information for our trading equipment so they can call and get an appointment made. And then when they submit that spreadsheet back, it lists line item.
What the price is for all of our equipment. And one thing that works, I feel works out better than like one of the guaranteed buyback programs. You know, 3 years down the road, we're going back and we're getting the competitive trade values back in from the dish or from our vendors. So I feel like that probably gives us a little bit better deal maybe than what we would see. I would imagine vendors might be a little conservative on a buyback program.
I assume you're not giving up the old unit until the new unit shows up.
Yeah,
And
correct.
So do you have any issues with condition change from when they viewed it to when they picked it up?
So yeah, we haven't came across that really yet, but obviously, so we get a purchase order in for a mowing tractor, say this time of year. Well, over the next several months, we keep using that mowing tractor. We tell the dealer that it's going to have hours on it, and so far dealers have maintained the price that they've put in for a bid on that. I imagine if we would ever have a situation where we rolled a tractor or something like that, or a loader, that would be a different story, and we'd probably have to reevaluate that and move forward. But so far, we haven't run into that situation yet.
Sam, I believe our definition of trade-in sales means we have to give it back or trade it back into the original vendor. Do y'all have that? Obviously, you don't have that same restriction. How are y'all able to get around that restriction?
So it's set up in our state laws in Ohio, how we can trade equipment in. And basically, we just have to make sure that we're getting the fair market value. And if our director says that it's in the best interest of our state, then we're basically okay to do that. Traditionally, we've always auctioned off our equipment. We've always seen really low returns on our auction equipment. And so this is a way that we're still getting obviously fair market value. We're getting bids from multiple people, which is why we feel that we're okay to do that. But yeah, we definitely trade into a different dealer than who we bought it from originally.
Sam, question on the vendor, participation. Are they showing a lot of interest, or you're getting, not that many, or how is that coming up?
Vendor participation's been really, really good. So with our loader program, we've been taking 3 or 4 of our districts and putting them together, and we've been buying about 20 to 22 loaders on a purchase with them. So that way we get a bulk discount, as much discount as we can get on a larger purchase order. And obviously our vendors have been really interested in that. We feel like we get a pretty good discount on the loaders that we're buying and on the tractors that we're buying. And there's been a lot of, obviously they want to make that sale, so there's been a lot of interest in that.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.